Welcome to the Phantom Zone.
In this week's episode, Season 5 premiere, first we have Arrival. The fortress is made and Zod's disciples arrive. Then in Mortal, Clark is without superpowers again and must stop the trio of dumbest villains possibly in the show's history. This is the SMALLVILLE Chronicles. Well, hello and welcome back. We are starting our midway point into the series. This is the final season that's part of the WB, I believe.
Yeah.
And this is where I think they really take off into the lore compared to like every other. This is where like we get lore heavy, especially like the introduction to the fortress in this episode, and other Kryptonians.
The introduction to the big bad of the season.
Yes,
and then the eventual. This begins the real introduction of like one after another, sort like a domino effect in a way. Of like Bart appearing, sort of started.
Yes, of the introduction of the other Justice League members. Lex kind of turning hard into like the darkness. The kind of beginning of the deterioration of Lana and Clark. Chloe becoming a bigger part, the Kents becoming a less of a part. We get the Phantom Zone and the beginnings of Zod. So there we get a lot this season. But to start, we get, which I think we ended our last one, was like, why does Clark just chuck the crystal? And the answer I think you found was it's an homage to the movie.
To the Donner film.
Yep. And we pick up like right from that moment, basically. And I think like I actually love that it's like the fortress it's
similar,
almost carbon copy.
Yeah, of the one from 77 or 78.
And I like that design. Like we watched Krypton. I like the way that Krypton looks in that show, but I kind of like the cleanness of the crystals and stuff in the old movies and in Smallville. I like that concept for the fortress.
Yeah, I was watching like about a week ago the documentary that released about around this time, or not around this time, like around 10 years or 15 years ago or 14 years ago, back when we're like right around the time Superman Returns came out.
Okay.
And I forgot who it was. It may have been Richard Donner, but he wanted like Krypton to be like the way people spoke was Shakespearean.
Yeah, it's like old theater, which we do. If you watch those movies, you get a lot in the way people talk. It's also like sterile, which I think was another thing that he really wanted. Like it's the cleanness is like the sterility of it all, which makes sense in his kind of vision of Krypton. But so here we get to cut back to Clark throwing the crystal of knowledge. The fortress is created. Clark walks in, and we hear Jor-El talking. And basically, this is like mimicking all the stuff from the Superman movie, the Christopher Reeve one. And Jor-El's like, the fortress is replicating the geography of Krypton so that you can start your training. And then we also realize that we cut to Chloe's just like, what's going on? And like, she's in the Arctic. And
she's in the snow. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, so she wanders into the fortress, and basically, she like Clark is in like a simulation, and then like she gets attacked by like wind.
No, it's like, well, what happens is
it's like a mini storm or something like. It's like kind of goofy.
She sees Clark, who's in like this bubble.
It's in a thing that we will see so many times in the show.
Yeah, where it's like his body is there, but his mind is, or his consciousness is conversing with Jor-El. But what she's trying to say, Clark, and then we get a close up on his eye, or I'm not sure if it was his eye on or his face, saying like, Clark, I know you can hear me. Please help me.
Yeah, and it basically snaps him out of it. And then he grabs her, and she's like, I knew you were faster than a speeding bullet. And he runs away.
Well, no, he says to Jor-El, say, please help me save her. And Jor-El says, or replies with, like, your destiny is more important than this person.
Well, it's like a one human life. I think something like that, right?
Yeah, like you have to. He has to continue his education.
Mm-hmm. So this is when we take our first big cut to, like, I guess one of the other scenes that just ended from last season. So Lana, where like there was like a giant the second meteor storm happened, and there was a giant crash right by her. She kind of, she had started, I think in the season 4, she like kind of climbed over the ridge to look in to see the giant black spaceship. So they kind of tweaked that a little bit where she's kind of not there specifically, but she sees 2 Kryptonians come out of the ship, which I don't remember if we ever get their names. We only ever see the guy for like a half a second after this. I don't know if they ever say their names, but they're in kind of leftover Legend of Hercules costumes.
They are what the black guy is, or they're Aether and Namek, which is like, come on, why?
I think it's because they didn't want to make them Ursa and what's the other character from the movie? It's Ursa and something, and then they didn't even reuse Ursa in Man of Steel. They reused the other guy though. Are
you talking about the guy who they used for their first season of Supergirl?
No, well, it's the 2 that are in the Zod Superman movie. Like his 2 compatriots, the woman and the giant guy. Isn't it like Ursa and something else?
It is Ursa and why am I having? I remember it was a character from. He was
Non.
Yeah, Non.
Yes. So
I was literally right at the Wikipedia page.
Yeah. And in Man of Steel, they reuse Non, but it's a different woman. But Ursa is almost always Zod's
right hand.
Yeah, but I think in the more recent continuity, they're like husband and wife with what's their kid's name? Is it Lorzod? I don't know. We're going like way into like deep Superman mythology.
Can we talk about the return of the tramp stamp?
Oh God. So yeah, Lana sees the 2 Kryptonians come out. They're in like this really terrible, like silverish gray, form-fitting, like metal tunics. Like they're very like they're not scantily clad, but they're not very clad. Like I don't know how else to describe it, but they're in terrible costumes, I would say. They're very lazy. Like I said, they look like they got picked up from like another show, like a Xena or something.
It really was. I was as soon as when I was watching the episode, I was like, Smallville. ... We finally got the budget. And I look at this and I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah. Well, they definitely spent money on the fortress, and they spent money on other things. Like the ship looks great, and some of the other things. I mean, these costumes just look terrible.
It was a jump in production value as well.
Mm-hmm. So, but they come out and basically there's a whole bunch of cops and they just heat vision everything to death.
Well, yeah. First, you gotta from the point of view of the guy in the helicopter.
Yeah, because they're like, what's? It's very much reminds me, and I know that they like a lot of stuff. It ties in more to the original, like to the movie, but it just reminds me of like when Vegeta and Nappa show up in Dragon Ball, and Nappa just like destroys everything immediately on Earth, like in that city. Like it's basically that. Like the 2 of them just like destroy everything around them. And I can't remember. Aren't they saying they're like looking for Kal-El or something?
Yeah, and
then I believe we cut away to Lex. So whereas Chloe was whisked off to the Arctic, Lex is left in the cave. He gets up, he finds the key inside that hidden chamber, and then
the 2 show up and say, "Where is Kal-El?" Or no, they think Lex is Kal-El because he's in the
cave and he has the key. And then they see that he's bleeding, and they're like, "You're not Kal-El," and just kind of like,
"Yeah, Kal-El will not bleed at one bleed from this." Yeah, and they just throw him against the wall. He hits the back of his head
again.
God, how are these people?
At least Lex kind of has like maybe a meta ability. He just heals from concussions.
It would just make me happy if we just got a one-off about
what, that the entire Smallville is like a Jacob's Ladder for Lex. It's just he died driving off the bridge.
No. if like in between, like sort of like what
like a in between episode where they're just getting like going to the doctor.
Yeah. And like they're all wearing neck braces.
Yeah. We kind of got that with Lana that one season.
Oh, when she got trampled by the horse because of
that's
Bugs.
like the only time we really got that. And we've gotten stuff with like Jonathan's heart attack. But to go back, so they're like, yeah, you're not Kal-El. They leave. Lex gets in his car and almost runs over Lana, who's just like wandering around bleeding in the middle of the road. And she's like, I saw a spaceship, Lex. And Lex is like, you had a head trauma. And she passes out. He sends Lana back to the mansion, and then his people bring the ship to Warehouse 15, which will come into play during the season. So we pop back to the Arctic. Clark is with Chloe in a hospital in the Yukon. So I guess they're like in Canadian Arctic, because I believe that's where the Yukon is. But I guess they're just like in super northern Canada. And she's like, yeah, I've known about your power since last year. I've been waiting for you to tell me. And Clark's like, yeah, so I'm not a meteor freak. I'm actually from another planet. And Chloe's like, don't worry, I won't tell anybody. And then they see the news and Clark's like, holy crap, my parents didn't evacuate. And Chloe's like, they need you more than me. Just come back and help me. And he leaves.
There's also some parts where he's like, Chloe, you're a good friend. You deserve more. Or
he's like, I should have trusted you.
Yeah.
And she kind of is like, yeah, I wish you did. But like, because of like one of the other episodes, she's like, I get it. Because she kind of learned that lesson in, was it Blank? It was like 2 or 3 episodes ago in season 4 when he lost like all of his memories.
Yeah. And then she asks, so does Lana know? And then he just gives a look that
says no.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
which will factor in all the way till season 10.
Yeah. Oh, it factors in like a lot this season and going into season 6 and 7, because it's kind of like it builds on like what the issue is between them. So we cut back to the mansion. Lana wakes up and Lionel is carving, I believe it's Zod's symbol all over the floor, because it's like the diamond with like the Z, like the specific Zod Z in it. And then kind of points and says the only thing that will hurt them is like their home. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then he points to the safe that has the kryptonite in it.
Yeah, the specific line was, their home is their poison. Their home is their poison.
Yeah. So we cut back to Lois, and she goes to the Kent house and finds it's basically destroyed. And she helps Jonathan find Martha, and they go to the hospital. We are to never speak of the Teagues again in any way, shape, or form, basically, except for like
a scene coming up later in the episode.
Yeah, and Lex mentioning the mom, but otherwise, like, they never mention Jason again. He is here in was it like here in 2, like dead, like doesn't exist. He's erased memory. So Clark kissed everyone, so they all forgot. Oh God, I forgot about that. Although I can't remember one of the Superman movies. I think is it 4? It's one of the ones where they like got rid of it. Like Returns ignores it. So I think it's 4 because she's not. Lois isn't in 3, right?
I think
3 is Richard Pryor, right?
3 is Richard Pryor.
And 4 is the Quest for Peace with Nuclear Man. Yeah. So,
which I still can't believe that's canon now.
Well, he got like destroyed instantly.
I know,
but I believe in 4, Lois basically is like, yeah, that didn't actually work. I just kind of made you let it think, because like wanted you to kind of tell me in your own way, like kind of what Chloe did. But to go back here, so they go to the hospital where Aether and Namek, which is kind of funny since the one character we'll see at the end of this episode went on to play the most famous Namek in a horrible, horrible movie. Do you not know what I'm talking about? Because James Masters went on to play Piccolo in Dragon Ball Evolution.
Yeah, that poor man.
Yeah.
He looked like a vegetable in that movie.
Oh God, it's so bad. So they go to the hospital. They're looking for Kal-El, and Lois is like, "What are you talking about?" And then like they start to choke her, and throw her through like a room where Jonathan is. Alana appears and is like, "I know where Kal-El is," and was like, he's at this mansion," and they're like, "Okay, so she's like, he's in there, and goes to like the vault, and there's all the rocks, and they're like, ugh. But this is like an annoying thing. So like the guy who's Namek is like weakened but still strong enough to like pick up the vault door and put it on there, and then they're fine. I was like, wow, that was really kind of lame. I guess maybe somehow, I guess because they're adults, they're stronger to it than Clark is. And then we get the quickest fight scene of all time, where Clark actually shows up, and they're like, "You must join us, Kal-El, to bring back like the savior of Krypton, our General Zod." And Clark's like, "No." And then the Aether's like, instead of it being like a piece of cellophane off of her chest, it is her bangle off of her arm, which turns into a vortex to open up the Phantom Zone. However, like Clark magically turns the tables on these two military people and kicks them into it, and they fall into the Phantom Zone, into the, which I do love, the call of redoing it like the movies, where it's like the flipping, turning mirror.
Yeah.
And then they just get thrown into space.
The thing I liked was I think it's Aether. She heat visions Clark as a way to nudge him in, try to nudge him in.
Mm-hmm.
He's holding on to a piece of rebar.
That's what I mean. Like, it is like the fastest fight. It's like, oh crap, we don't have enough for like all of the special effects. And they hit him. Oh, he somehow, it's like WWE reversal. Like, he just like does it, and then it's like a quick pin, and they're out. Like, he jobs the shit out of them when it should not be the case.
Yeah, he pulls a Princess Leia from Last Jedi, and just flies without moving. And
although he shouldn't be able to fly yet because of a whole bunch of other dumb shit that ends up getting it put into the lore in the show. And
he pushes them, or he palm pushes them.
Yeah, he smushes their faces into the Phantom Zone. He's like, go away, and defeats them. But this leads us to like our interesting stuff, where basically, so Jor-El had told him if he does not return to finish his training before the sun sets, that he will become human, basically. And so he has a choice to leave or to stay with Lana. So he chooses to stay with her and becomes quote unquote mortal.
Which means we are now in Superman 2.
Yes. Which I do like that they kind of tie in all the stuff from those movies into this. So then we cut to Lex shows up at the Yukon, and right before he walks in the door, Chloe's like, no, she's like, oh, Clark. And he's like, why would it be Clark? And she's like, I don't know. I just didn't know who else would come here. She's like, I was definitely not expecting you. And he's like, well, how else did you expect to get home from the Yukon? And she's like, I don't know. I thought Clark would ask you. And he's like, how did you get here? And she's like, I have no idea. And he's like, yeah. And it's just like this standoff of them just being like, yeah, like not trusting each other. And it's just like this awkward.
Then we get to the point where Clark is, he goes back to the hospital, and he thanks Lois for being there for his parents when he couldn't be. And in a moment very reminiscent of the episode with the dance or the prom.
Oh, wait, the prom or the season 1 dance?
No, the one
the one where Chloe got possessed. Mm-hmm.
Where it's like he offers her the flowers, and she does a very, I'm not the one you want who deserves these very valuable, very beautiful flowers, and like I'm not the one you came to see. So we then pan in on Lana, who's reading a newspaper which talking about like detailing the deaths of Jason Teague and Genevieve Teague, and we see an arrow, and it says "You owe me one, L," and she looks like she's looking like the expression on her face makes it like she made a deal with the devil.
Mm-hmm. Well, they definitely do a lot of deal with the devil stuff with Lana going through the seasons. So
then we get the culmination of the episode.
Yes, the huge reveal at the very end, which I actually really like the way they did all this. as well as like how the character works out. So we already mentioned James is it Marsters?
Yeah.
Very famously known as Spike and Buffy. Also, that was on this network. Like we said, he's been in Dragon Ball Evolution. Most recently he was on The Runaways. I don't know what else he's done, but he's like a pretty good character actor. I really liked him in Buffy. He kind of gets to play a similar character in this.
He's been on Torchwood.
He's got like maximum level nerd cred for good and bad reasons.
Yeah.
He's been in like some really bad stuff, but he's also been in like
Angel.
Yeah. Well, he played his character Spike.
Yeah.
In Superman, the Doomsday movie, he voiced Lex Luthor. I'm trying to look and see. So Angel, Buffy, Millennium, Andromeda.
Andromeda was very cult. That was like that. I mean, that was Gene Roddenberry.
Yep. Was that with Kevin Sorbo?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, tying back to my comments about the costumes in the beginning.
Yeah.
But he's been in like a bunch of stuff. So, like you said, Torchwood, Saving Grace. He's done voices in Clone Wars. He was in Numbers. Superhero Squad. He voiced Mr. Fantastic. Caprica, Hawaii Five-0, Supernatural, which is funny because that's another CW show.
Can I mention that it was an episode about like people like witches and warlocks, and like the witches were trying to kill their husbands. James Marsters' wife on the show was Charisma Carpenter.
Oh, really? That's hilarious.
Yeah, it was just whoever wrote like the like head person casting was, or writer who wrote like, or whoever wanted to have that happen. Massive nerd in the best way.
Yeah, so and recently, to go into his nerddom, he's the American voice for Zamatsu, who was a character in the new Dragon Ball series. So again, kind of giving him a chance to redo that. But yeah, so that we see the black ship in the thing, and basically this black ooze drips out and then forms like T-1000 style into James Marsters. And
let's not say what his character is.
Yes, it is very, very like anybody who knows Superman watched this one's like, oh yeah, that's obviously who that character is. But yes. So anything else from this show that this episode we haven't talked about? I'm trying to think. We touched on a lot of stuff. I would say like this has more than almost any other episode callbacks to those Superman movies, specifically the first one. Did you want to talk about what you were talking about before we started?
What was I talking about before we started?
The dedication that's in this episode.
Oh, yeah. This episode was dedicated to Jeff Loeb's late son, Sam. Like 1988 to 2005, he passed away from bone cancer. He was battling it for 3 years, and he actually there was an issue of Superman Batman where he helped write a story, and then the story was written as a tribute to him, where he was a hero that inspired Superman, and it's just a shame that he passed. Like he could have done a lot of great things.
That sucks, but
also something I forgot to bring up. This is the first episode that begins with the color change in the Smallville.
Oh yes, well it has I feel like compared to the other seasons, like this was like a huge change in the intro. Is this season?
Yeah, because the first 4, like 1, 2, 3, 4, were all Smallville and orange, and now it's just this bright and beautiful red, and also some continuity. Namek and Aether, they're actually from the comics from the Silver Age, and they're in the episode Zod. They are mentioned by Zod. Despite starting his training in this episode, it takes him 4 years to actually okay, I'll do it.
Yes, yeah, to go back to his training, which I guess is why when it does end up coming up, he can't fly, is how they get around it, is part of the reason why he can't fly. Although when Supergirl finally shows up, it's very confusing as why he cannot fly. And their explanation is really hand wavy.
Yeah, and I there's a quote I love there's a quote from the episode I love, like really, like words cannot explain it. Where Jor-El's saying, "You have traveled far. One journey has ended. A new journey is about to begin. Welcome home, my son."
Oh, that is good. Because this is the beginning. We'll get into it as the season progresses, a little bit in the next episode, actually, into the change in Lionel's character. So this could actually be a really good segue to jump into our second episode, which is Mortal. It's like a mix of good and bad. There are some good scenes, but otherwise there's lots of stuff I really don't like in this. But we get kind of a flip of, was it season 3, I believe, with Lex in the hospital? So now Lex is watching his father basically in the same cell, who is pretty much catatonic. He's in a straitjacket. His eyes are white, I believe. And this is similar to, I can't remember his name. All I remember is us calling him Professor McGlasses.
Yeah.
So he's just not responsive and basically tells the doctors, monitor them at all times. As he's leaving, he bumps into the character Tommy Lee, who has electrical powers, and they don't notice that his restraints are deactivated. He takes out that guy and then also unlocks these two albino-y twins, and they run away together.
These two orcs.
Oh my god, they are so bad. We'll get to them once they start. I don't remember if this is where they start talking. I think it is. And basically, they only communicate by one starting and then the other one finishing a sentence. And they're also not very smart, and their powers work together to basically make energy blasts, I think.
They're sort of like the what's the right one? What is his?
I was gonna say something very not PC about them, comparing them to. They're not right in the head. There are some pieces missing to the puzzle, but we'll get to them.
Basically, they're like 0.5s. One or they're very codependent, and like one
yes.
will now, if one's taken out, the other one can't do anything. They have to be in unison.
Oh, these guys! So they are actually brothers. They have had pretty good careers. So they were in Clue before. The one was in Clue. Then he did Supernatural. Then Fargo, which he was on for like a whole season. Then he was on Travelers, and then he was on Riverdale as Nico, which I don't remember that character. And then the other brother was on Battlestar Galactica, also on Clue, Fargo as well. Are they brothers in Fargo? Yes, they played brothers in Fargo. But then this other brother was also in Legion, and he was also in Riverdale. So they've done some stuff separately, but they've also done a ton of stuff together because they are identical twins. I'm trying to remember who this guy was in Legion. Oh, I remember him now. He's in the first season. He's one of the people in the mental institution. Okay. To go back to the episode, though, so they escape and they're headed to, they ask where they're going, and Tommy Lee says to Smallville. So back in Smallville, they're raising a barn for the Kents. Jonathan asks Clark how he's doing, and he says that he doesn't mind being sore or in pain. And Chloe's like, I know it's adjusting, but believes that his destiny is more than a farm life. And I think he smashes his finger with a hammer during this. And Clark's like, I'm fine being free of Kryptonian destiny. And basically him and Lana are kind of together. And Lana shows up and is like, it seems like the world is off your shoulders. And Lex arrives and is like, he hopes they can rebuild their friendship. And Clark and Lana go to the barn to get, some supplies, and they're going to put the past behind them. And Clark is more kind of chill around her that he's basically human. So they start hooking up, and they kind of slow down. He says they should slow down because they want the first time to be special. Until these three geniuses show up, the twins blast Clark and pin him to the ceiling. Tommy Lee talks about how everybody in Belle Reve wants him and how he's a legend there, and Clark tell him he's got the wrong guy. He's like, basically, I might have to kill you and your girlfriend. Lex pops over to the Kawachi caves and he finds Chloe there looking at the altar, and he's like, how did you make it to the Yukon? And then he's basically like, I want to know what happened in the cave and Clark's involvement. And then she's basically like, well, I'm pretty sure you know more than you are saying, because basically Lana's still saying she saw a spaceship and Lex is saying it never happened. And you should stop asking questions or I'm going to start asking some of my own. I'm kind of plowing through this because this is not one of the better episodes.
There's something we forgot to mention about the way the first the premiere ended.
Oh, really? Okay.
When Clark is talking to Lana, like she sort of leans in and says, "Do you believe we are alone in the universe?" Or is that or life on other planets?
Yes. Yeah. I think it's like the very end of them, like when they're like kind of talking. But yes, you're right. Because that plays heavily into the rest of the season.
And how she basically has PTSD.
Yes. So, back at the farmhouse, Clark knows that basically he's with the Bellry escapees, and there he finds out basically that they were part of an abandoned test group subject to green kryptonite injections. And because of this, they've kind of become addicted to them. And the only way to get it is, he's like, I'm going to make you get it. Basically saying that, like, you've heard that you can do amazing things. And then Jonathan and Martha show up, and they're like, the prisoners are like, oh, get rid of them. And Clark's like, oh, they're like, what happened to Lon? It's like, oh, she went to go lay down.
And they're like, why is your shirt on backwards or inside out?
And he's just like, well, and they're just like, okay, she went to go lay down. And then basically the future's just like, all right, that's it. You two get in here too. And they're like, you need to go.
Well, no, it's actually Jonathan starts talking about how,
because they think that they were having sex right?
Yeah, and Clark just freaks out and starts acting very uncharacteristic, and is like, why are you always all over me? Why do you never give me a break?
Yeah, and then that's when they're like, what the hell is actually going on?
And then the Tommy Lee brings out,
it's the worst name too. So yeah, they send out Clark to go get the stuff, or they're going to kill everybody.
This guy is a dime store. What's his name from Battlestar?
Oh, I was going to say he's like a worse Jake Busey.
No, the guy who it's hard. I'm trying really hard to navigate spoilers because he's one of the. He's you know what?
Oh, wait, are you talking about the one that comes back?
There must be some kind of way out of here, said the Joker to the thief.
I'm missing.
He was part of the resistance on Caprica.
Oh, okay. I think I know who you mean. Oh, okay. All right. I'm sorry. Yes, I can see that. So to get back to the show, though, Clark gets Chloe and is like, what can I do? And she's like, we go to Luthor Corp, and she has like all this spy gear, and she basically is like, he's like, well, where did you get this stuff from? And it's like, well, I borrowed it from, I believe this is where she says like she borrowed it from the general or something. And basically she like laptop hacks her way into the whole place. Inside is like a reconstruction of the inside the Kent house that's being rebuilt. Sheriff Adams shows up and Lee's like, Martha, go get rid of her. She sends Jonathan and Lana to go get rid of her. Jonathan said they found the car for the convicts up the road, and they make small talk for a few minutes, and then she leaves. And basically, like, as she's leaving, she's like, yeah, they're definitely here. Clark goes into the ventilation duct when we go back to Luthor Corp and has Chloe in his earpiece. So she's like the girl behind the computer, which she will be for many, many seasons.
No, not many seasons, for the rest of the seasons. Yeah,
for the rest. They kind of go back and forth with each other, and then she's kind of like, yeah, well, you told Pete about your superpowers like a long time ago, and he's like, ah. So we go back to the farm, and yeah, Sheriff Adams is like, stuff is weird, and kind of leaves. And basically, like, as she's like, yeah, shit's weird, they note, like, the convicts notice, and the twins put up the Tommy Lee blasts her with electricity, and the twins put up a force field around the place. Clark and Chloe locate the serum, but they can't get through the room where it's stored because it's locked, and only Lex's thumbprint can get it. And she's like, oh, Lex picked up this flashlight, so let me do like this thing with the thing. Except that it's like crossed with laser beams, and Clark reaches for it and it burns his arm, which they definitely get away with, like, oh, laser beams and like those things are usually for security. They're not actually like laser beams that burn stuff. So it's funny, but it's terrible.
The entire time I was watching the sequence, I was like, dun 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 dun.
Yeah, it's very Mission Impossible, and it's like very like this is like, all right, we spent so much money in that opening episode. We need to save a shit ton of money in the second one. So, but the cops can't get into the forest field. Clark arrives and he's like, "Y'all let me handle stuff. I have the thing that they want." And Clark gets inside and he like fights with them. He has no powers, so he takes like a sledgehammer, and he's like fighting with them. Chloe uses like a flash grenade, and
which was a graduation present from Lois.
Yes, I do actually like that kind of like that. Her and Lois kind of goof around with like stealing stuff from the military because they're like Lois's dad is like one of the highest people in the military, and so he dodges Tommy's energy blast and it hits the twins, and he basically shorts out his electricity with like the hammer. And basically like grounds Tommy and then like punches the shit out of him, and the police come and arrest everybody. Sorry. So as they're going away, Chloe's like, "Hey, congrats, you're still a hero even without your powers." And then it's revealed that someone was watching like Chloe and Clark breaking into the stuff and Clark being burned, and basically looks up and sees Clark standing in the doorway, and it's very obvious who it is. Clark like goes into the room and punches him, knocking him to the and basically it's Lex that's watching the stuff. And Clark walks in and punches Lex in the face, knocking him to the floor. And Clark like wants to know what he promised those meteor freaks, and tells him that if he wanted to test him, he should have done it himself. And Clark tries to punch him again, but Lex punches Clark back. And when Clark's lip bleed, he basically is like, "Are you satisfied?" And basically he leaves. And afterward, like Clark is going to Lana's apartment and tells her about his and Lex's fight, but he talks to her about how he feels uncertain, being like, basically he thought his life would be different after everything, and Lana's like kind of like patches him up and they get it on. And that is how this episode closes out. So
not just that, they consummate their relationship to Coldplay, the ultimate way it should be.
Yes. So this, except for like this one scene at the end with Lex and the opening scene, the rest of this episode is kind of trash in my opinion. I always skipped grades in the first episode. So actually so to go back, the first episode I think is a solid like B+. I think it is a good opening, but like the season 2 opening, it's basically a second half of a season 1 closing.
Yeah.
But this is like a terrible, terrible second episode.
And Steve DeKnight wrote it.
Yeah, besides seeing Lionel, like, catatonic, and the kind of Clark decking Lex, like, the rest of the middle is just, like, filler to show that Lex is not changed and that he still thinks there's shit up about Clark. And this whole thing was, like, a test. And it's dumb. But yeah, basically, that's kind of just about it. So, did you have anything else on these episodes, or on this episode?
I look back to this episode with nostalgia glasses on, but it's hard to take them off because I know that essentially it'd be, if I took said glasses off, I would write the show off forever, because like they could have easily brought back like any of the characters from the one-offs.
Yes, which they have done before.
Yeah, like that when they had Jonathan Taylor Thomas
and Iceman.
Yeah, Iceman
and the other kid that was in that too, that Jonathan Taylor Thomas killed.
Yeah, just, like that was sort of them shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, but there's like 50 million other characters that they could have brought back, and they just didn't. But yeah, like I think that would have made this episode much, much better. But do we want to kind of do a quick preview that will go into our clips from the next episodes?
At first, I just want to say that Stephen DeKnight wrote like certain episodes he wrote for like the episodes he wrote for season 5. Just like the Thirst, like aka the vampire episode.
Oh god, yeah, that's coming up.
Then he redeems himself with Splinter, which is a
great episode.
Lockdown, which has to do with the spaceship.
Yes.
And then tomb, which is a bit of a mystery episode where it's like a spirit trying to find out who killed her.
Yeah, I like that episode actually.
And then like Mercy, which is Martha and Lionel focused.
Oh, that is another really good episode. Yeah, there are this season has like mostly great episodes with like 2 or 3 of like the worst episodes. Because this season has in general like one of the best episodes of the series in Lexman. But Thirst is awful.
Yeah.
And Immortal, which we just talked about, is awful. The Aquaman episode, which is one of the ones we're going to be, which is what the second one we're watching next week, is fine. It's not great. I actually think the one before it, Hidden, which is our next one, is a very heavy episode, and I actually really like it.
It's the point in the show where Clark really starts where he starts fulfilling his destiny. Like the shot of him on the missile, like as it's flying up, is just powerful.
All right, so right now we will check out a little bit.
Should I give some exposition?
Sure.
Okay, so for Hidden, or for the 2 clips for Hidden and Aqua, Hidden will be a pivotal point in the episode where where Gabriel, who is a former Smallville High student, tries to bomb Smallville and eliminate every single meteor freak that's still there, or make it impossible for any new meteor freaks to exist. And Clark tries to confront him, and he gets shot. Then in Aqua, it's Lois and Clark arguing about AC's, aka Arthur Curry, the things he's done, but this is all prior to them working together. So.
Gabriel, I'm sorry. Everything happened so fast I didn't know who else to call.
It's all right. You can come back with me. You'll be safe there.
Gabriel! Which silos did you activate?
I trusted you.
Whatever your reasons for doing this, killing everyone's not the answer.
You're wrong, Clark. It's the only answer.
Thanks for dropping the A-bomb on my date, Smallville. Did you apologize to AC?
I didn't get a chance to.
Why not?
I was too busy playing terrorist.
What?
Lois, I saw him trying to blow up some sort of lab.
You really don't like him, do you?
It has nothing to do with the way I feel.
No? Attacking AC, making up stories? You know, if I didn't know any better, I'd think somebody was jealous.
All right. So that just about does it. So quick round of plugs. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Check out all the other shows on the stream. So you have the After Darks, the movie reviews, the comic show. That's all part of the Phantom Zone. Don't forget to go to Lost Horror. Check out Legion of Tunes. All the other shows, including Alan's other show, Lost Horror Games.
We talked about the Nine in the Woods developer going bye-bye to the world, and the return of Telltale.
Oh wow!
Well, it's not really a wow yet. It's not. People are not happy.
Oh really?
But considering it's the gaming scene, no one's ever happy.
Well, that is the most true statement I have ever heard. So yeah, once again, don't forget to rate, review, subscribe. Go to YouTube, hit that little notification button, and leave a review on iTunes if you can. And don't forget to tell a friend. And that does it for us this week. I'm Lou Gonzalez.
And I am Alan Muir, and this podcast stands for Truth, Justice, and American Way.